You know, it kind of feels like yesterday that the PS3 was still new. I mean, I still remember Infamous 2 posters all over my mall. I still remember going into stores and them having like Mortal Kombat 9 that you can play like as a tryout. And I remember thinking of it as just last gen with the new PS4 and Xbox One that came out. But now, here we are 2 console generations later and the PS3 is now as old as the PS2 was when the PS4 came out. So, long time has passed and it's safe to say that it's safe to start feeling nostalgic for the feel of some of these older PS3 games. And it's that feeling of new nostalgia that's brought me to talk about Resident Evil Revelations today. In Resident Evil Revelations, you primarily play as Jill Valentine, exploring an abandoned cruiser that is taken over by some sort of bioterrorists, and you're trying to figure out what their plan is, what's going on, and what secrets your own organization, the BSAA, might be keeping from you. Now I'm playing this on a Nintendo Switch, but holy fuck is it a PlayStation 3 game. Narrow corridors, split off sections that are literally just about shooting down hallways, third-person shooting controls, set pieces, everyone looks like a wax figure. It's like as PS3 as a PS3 game can get. So I'm Pliskin, and today let's talk about what I'm glad we've taken from the PS3 generation that's still around today, and what I'm glad was left behind in the 7th generation of consoles. So like most third-person shooters in the PlayStation 3 generation, it's either going to be heavily based off of Gears of War or Resident Evil 4. Seeing as though this was a Capcom game, it's of course going to be based off of Resident Evil 4. I mean, that was considered and still is considered one of the greatest games of all time, and that control scheme really revolutionized everything, and I mean everything. From stuff like Metal Gear to Last of Us to what we're talking about today. Newer, well, quote-unquote newer, Resident Evil games. So like Resident Evil 4, you can expect slow, over-the-shoulder shooting, and action where you have to manage your ammo, dodge enemies, and find different key items to progress. Some improvements have been made, of course. For example, you can move while shooting, albeit you move very slowly, so it's not too different, but it still gives you more combat options. And now you have a proper crosshair instead of a weird kind of laser sight on the bottom of your gun. Another addition here is the partner system. Now you'd think this would mean this would be a co-op game and 2 players can play it a la Resident Evil 5. However, that isn't the case. You just have someone that's there with you, no matter who you're playing as or where you are, making quips and just being there. Now this can work for good in the sense that the quips could be interesting or their character can be interesting, or it can work for bad in the sense that they ruin the horror atmosphere. For example, when I'm walking around with Jill, and she's followed around by fat Hispanic Keanu Reeves, it can really break the experiences when I'm going down dark, dank, narrow hallways, wondering what's going to be around the corner, and I just turn it and he's just there, being like, hey, what's up? It makes sense for the narrative, because then you have other parts where you play as Chris Redfield, we'll talk more about that later, but him and his partner talk about what it is to be partners and how you build trust with that other person, so I guess they're trying to go for that, having you build trust with this AI character that's always going to be accompanying you and having your back, but sometimes when it's focusing on horror instead of action, it's really a detriment more so than it is something that upholds the experience on the whole. Another addition that I really have to talk about is this weird scanner that RE Revelations introduces. Now the whole idea with this, as a BSA agent, you have to scan different like bioorganic materials to understand it, and if you do this you fill up a meter which can give you health items. I think I really haven't used this too often except when mandatory. There was actually a point in one of the cutaway scenes where you're playing as a different character, trust me, we'll talk about these 2 guys in a second, but when you're playing as them, where I was lost in like 2 hallways for literally 30 minutes trying to find a screwdriver, looking all over in every corner, being like, I searched this, I looked everywhere, but then I realized, hey, I have to take out the scanner, point at one of the spots that I've been looking for the past 5 minutes, and only then did the item appear. So the scanner isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in these segments where it's mandatory, it really just pisses me off, throws off the pacing, and isn't really an addition that I find worth it and hope never returns to Resident Evil games. Now, this wouldn't be a Resident Evil game without puzzles, and this game does have puzzles, albeit really light puzzles. Now, most puzzles come down to, hey, I need to find this item that fits into this door, and now the door will open, which is fine and dandy. But then the other form of primary puzzles that you're going to be solving are these weird circuit puzzles you need to do to open doors. This involves using a screwdriver to open up a circuit breaker, get inside there, rearrange the wires, and the door opens. Now, for people that are really hardcore into puzzles and riddles like in the old Resident Evil games and old Silent Hill games, you're going to be disappointed with this. However, as someone who enjoys light puzzles, I had no issues with this. It did its purpose and added more layers to the gameplay. Next up, we gotta talk about the boss fights. Now, the bosses in this game are tough as nails, but not for all the right reasons. Now, I like a good challenge in a boss fight. I like having to manage my ammo and hit them with the right thing at the right time in the right order or I die, right? For example, there's this one boss fight, Rachel, this infected BSAA agent that stalks you down through these creepy hallways, and it's really freaky. Like, she's this tall, weird, gangly, scary monster lady that's chasing you. Yeah, that's right, all you guys that are into the RE lady are weird. That kind of shit is scary. Super tall, gangly, demonic-looking women are scary. You guys are freaks for liking that. Anyways, Rachel will stalk you through the hallways, and you need to manage your grenades, your shotgun ammo, and your pistol ammo in the right order in order to defeat her. This is fine and dandy, except for the fact that there are random enemies sprinkled throughout this section that make this boss fight artificially harder, because if you accidentally hit them instead of Rachel, now you don't have enough ammo to finish the fight, and this is really fucking annoying. And it's not that I have a problem with the enemies per se, like you have some interesting variations of the normal zombie, the zombie that shoots stuff at you but can also lay traps for you, the bladed arm zombies, that kind of stuff, like nothing really too interesting or worth going into, but the monsters in this game serve their purpose and add to that horror or action beat when they need to. However, during a boss fight, if I'm having more trouble with it because there's just too many enemies there that are blocking me from getting to the actual fight rather than the boss being fair and challenging, that's an issue, and that's bad boss design. Now we'll finish up this gameplay section by continuing to talk about design. The design of these levels are extremely PlayStation 3 in the sense that they are all hallways. Now, this sometimes is an issue, like this is more about like the PS3 generation rather than Resident Evil Revelations, but these hallways can work or they cannot work. For example, when I'm playing as Chris Redfield and his partner Jessica, and we're going through like this Arctic tundra and exploring mountains, it becomes very obvious and jarring that, hey, why do these mountains just consist of weird, naturally formed hallways? I mean, it reminds me of that one scene in Halo 1.
This cave is not a natural formation. Someone built it, so it must lead somewhere.
But yeah, on the other hand, when you're on the boat, these hallways actually make sense because a boat would consist of different rooms and hallways. And with that being said, a giant abandoned boat in the middle of the ocean is a great setting for survival horror. And I mean that. This game is an attempted return to horror. You see, with Resident Evil 5 and 6 and even 4 kind of, there was a major departure from scariness in the Resident Evil games, and people started to get sick of it, but this was before Capcom really was willing to commit to an RE7 type of game. So instead what they tried to do was please everyone in Revelations by having a lot of those action elements in the base gameplay of 4, but then they tried to bring back that mystique of being isolated and alone, just like in the Spencer Mansion. And for the most part, it worked. The boat is cool. It has this atmosphere change ability. Like, for example, when you first go into it, it's dark, it's dingy, there's blood and torn up corpses, and monsters leap around the corner and are hiding in rooms, and you're genuinely creeped out. But then you get to other sections and it's so bright and grandiose, and just you're in awe. Like, there's this one large hall area that connects the casino to the food hall, and it's just brilliant to look at. But then at the same time, you never really feel safe. So there might be areas that look nicer or quote-unquote less scary, but you're always tense because you're always aware of the fact that you're constantly in danger. For example, when I first went into the casino area and I was walking around and I saw this cutout cardboard of this chick in a bunny suit or in the sexy like casino attire, I jumped because when I see a humanoid shape, I immediately think if it's not like my partner Parker, that's an enemy. So I went up the stairs and I saw that and I like drew my weapon. I got like really scared, but then I was like, oh, it's just a cardboard cutout of a lady. And the fact that the game could do that through this boat environment and always keeping me on my toes, that's pretty fucking awesome. But what this boat succeeds in doing best is returning to form for Resident Evil. You see, in Resident Evil 4 and onward from that point, at least up until Revelations, you're constantly moving forward to new areas. This works with survival action games, but in a survival horror game, it works better if you're in one singular area and you start off confused and afraid, and slowly as you unlock more areas and go back and forth, you start becoming a lot more assertive and confident in the space that you're in. Resident Evil Revelations does that. You find keys that bring you back to old areas, that unlock new rooms, that unlock new weapons. It's that classic RE formula that these games have down pat, where finding these keys and unlocking these new areas eventually get you to find new weapons, which makes you more confident, which doesn't necessarily make you less scared, but makes you feel more prepared. And that feeling of slowly accumulating power and confidence is awesome. And the fact that Resident Evil Revelations returns to that is pretty awesome, and a lot of that is partly in thanks to this awesome boat environment. And if this whole game took place in this boat, it would be flawless in terms of its setting, in terms of its pacing, and it wouldn't have that PS3 jankiness. However, it doesn't take place just in this boat, and like I mentioned before, there are sections where you cut away to other characters, and yeah. Now there's segments where you play as every character in different areas that aren't the boat. For example, Jill has a section on a beachhead that preludes the boat, which works as a tutorial for the scanner. Parker has a hallway shooter in a building during a terrorist attack. Chris has this mountaineering adventure. And then you have Keith, and I don't even remember the other one's name. Oh. The sections with Chris are good, because it's like an interesting little break from the boat, and yeah, it's kind of weird to be like, oh, why is this mountain consisting of hallways? But once you get past the PS3 jank and you just start playing through it, him and his new partner Jessica have this interesting dynamic of them trying to warm up to each other since Chris is so used to working with Jill. It's kind of like what he went through in Resident Evil 5, except now with a new chick. Jessica's... I mean, this is a Resident Evil game. You know what? Let's take a break for a quick tangent right now. Most mainline Resident Evil games work like this. If you're like playing as a woman, or if there's a woman character, you're going to be gorgeous, supermodel levels of gorgeous. If there's a man that's around, he's going to be absolutely hideous. He's going to look like just the slime of humanity. Like, who the hell think this even looks like a human being? Like, just completely unapproachable, hideous, unless you're Chris Redfield or Leon Kennedy. So yeah, with that being said, Jessica definitely falls into that supermodel category. She's interesting, she seems nice enough to listen to, the conversations between her and Chris are nice, and they serve as a nice little break from the boat sections and the horror that ensues there. But then you get to play as these two fuckers. What the hell were you thinking, Capcom? To put these guys in a nutshell, they remind me of those guys that I used to see in my anthropology classes that would like be too stoned to even do like any, like the simplest form of homework, that would try to strike up conversations with me and I'd slowly start scooting to the other side of the room. Just completely unapproachable loser fuckheads, just like, look at this cutscene.
So now what? There's an underground chamber. We're preparing to storm it now.
Wow, that sounds like a job for us, don't it, Grinder?
Wait, we haven't received authorization yet.
It's all right. We're on it, okay? Besides, if you need someone to sniff something out, ain't no one better than my boy here.
Hey, I'm right here, Grinder.
What's this music? What are these dialogue lines? I mean, sure, I'll give them points because they make a reference to The Thing, which is one of my favorite movies, but holy shit, these are the most unlikable characters I've ever seen in a video game, and this is someone that's recently gone through the trauma of seeing something like Abby existing. And it's like every time these guys pop up, it's just like, can I get back to the actual game? Can I get back to the boat? I mean, you get to use a G36 when you're playing as them, which is kind of cool, but like, yeah, like, there's nothing appealing here. This makes me want to turn off the game, and now that I've actually played through this, I understand why so many people have a problem with these two characters and their sections. But yeah, that pretty much sums up my ideas on the mainline part of the game. When you're not playing on the boat, the game definitely takes a dip with a few exceptions here and there. When you're on the boat, it's an awesome horror/action experience, and honestly, I can play a game where I'm walking around as Jill Valentine in her outfit from this game, like, forever. For no particular reason. No particular reason at all. However, the mainline game isn't where this stops, because this game has raid mode, which is awesome. It features a shit ton of unlockables, extra challenge modes where you can revisit different missions, choose different characters that you unlock by getting points in raid mode. There's like a pirate costume for Jill apparently that I really want to unlock. It's fun, it adds more value to the game. It reminds me of the MGS2 VR missions, because once you beat the game, or if you're tired of the mainline game, you can go and play little bite-sized versions of the gameplay loop. So if you like the gameplay loop, it adds tons of life and value to the game. There is an online component, however, I don't think it's up or working. Again, I'm playing on the Switch and I haven't found anyone. Maybe if you still own this on a PlayStation 3, it's still up and running. However, yeah. But anyways, like, the baseline single-player raid mode experience is really fun, really addicting, and if you have RE Revelations and have never tried this, you're doing it wrong.
Hey, are you even listening?
We'll find you, Jill. I promise.
So in conclusion, RE Revelations is a perfect example of a very PS3 feeling game, for better or worse. If you're striving or if you're thirsty for that kind of PS3 nostalgia, you want those hallways, you want those set pieces, you want those wax figures, this game has got you. And underneath all that, it's got a pretty solid survival horror experience. Minus those few sections I talked about, if you enjoy the mainline game, you also have like raid mode to go after. Like, this is just a very fun game. I wouldn't say it's a masterpiece, I wouldn't even say it's the greatest PS3 game. However, if you're into that PS3 feeling generation of games, this is definitely one you should check out. Definitely one that'll tickle that nostalgia urge you might be feeling. And I think that a lot of people might be feeling this sort of nostalgia, because if you remember with the Game Awards, they announced the Callisto Protocol, which is like kind of a spiritual successor to Dead Space, and Dead Space was another one of those PS3 survival horror games that had this same kind of feel. So maybe we might be returning to a time where games had simpler premises, and were easier to tackle and bite down in small bites before everything just became Far Cry 3. Well, anyways guys, this has been Pliskin. Little bit of a different video. Was playing Resident Evil Revelations and it really tickled that kind of nostalgia that I didn't even know I had, so I figured I'd share it with you guys. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, if you're gonna go try out RE Revelations, or if you already have it and you're still playing it to this day, let me know down in the comments below. Leave a like, subscribe if you enjoyed, and yes, I promise that one guy, I forget your username, but I will be making another Titanfall 2 video soon. Anyways guys, this has been Pliskin, over and out.